$37. Madison Carter stared at the glowing screen of her phone, the number mocking her in bright, cheerful pixels. $37.14. That was the sum total of her existence. That was what stood between her and living in a cardboard box under the I-95 overpass. "Come on," she whispered, her voice cracking in the silence of her studio apartment. She refreshed the banking app again, praying for a glitch, a miracle, a clerical error in her favor. The number didn't change. A notification pinged at the top of the screen. Email from landlord urgent. She didn't need to open it to know what it said. 48 hours. Pay up or get out. Another ping. This one was worse. Client Helix Corp. Subject project cancellation. "You've got to be kidding me," Madison groaned, dropping her head into her hands. Her fingers tangled in her messy chestnut hair, pulling slightly at the roots, the physical sting grounding her panic. $5,000. I was banking on that $5,000. She stood up. Pacing the small room, the walls felt like they were shrinking, pressing in on her chest. Panic was a cold, slithering thing in her gut. She needed cash. Fast. Not next week. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Her eyes landed on her MacBook Pro sitting on the stained coffee table. Her livelihood. Her baby. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the aluminum machine. "I have no choice." The midnight flea market was less of a market and more of a graveyard for unwanted things. It smelled of stale kettle corn, damp pavement, and desperation. The perfect place for Madison right now. She clutched her laptop bag tight against her chest, navigating the maze of tents. The air was thick, humid for October, sticking to her skin like a second layer of clothing. Laptop good parts, a vendor with no teeth hissed at her as she walked by. "No, sorry," Madison muttered. Keeping her head down, she needed the pawn tent at the back. She turned a sharp corner, away from the noise of the main crowd, trying to take a shortcut. The shadows here were deeper, stretching long and distorted across the cracked asphalt. The noise of the crowd faded into a dull roar, replaced by a heavy, eerie silence. That was when she saw it. It wasn't a tent. It was just a small folding table draped in velvet so dark it looked like a hole in the universe. An old man sat behind it. He looked ancient, his skin like crumpled parchment paper, but his eyes, they were amber, bright, piercing, unblinking amber. But Madison didn't look at the man. She was looking at the rusted metal cage sitting on the velvet. Inside, curled into a ball of misery, was a white wolf pup. It was impossibly small, its fur matted with grime, ribs protruding sharply against its skin. It was shivering so violently the metal bars of the cage rattled. Madison stopped. Her feet literally refused to move forward. A strange sensation washed over her, a wave of heat that started at the base of her spine and shot up to her skull. It wasn't just pity. She had seen stray dogs before and felt sad. This was different. This was a physical pull, like a hook snagged in her chest, reeling her in. She walked toward the table, forgetting the laptop, forgetting the rent. "He's dying," she said. Her voice sounded foreign to her ears, hoarse. The old man didn't move. He didn't blink. "He's waiting," the man corrected. His voice sounded like dry leaves scraping together. Madison crouched down, through the bars. The pup lifted its head. Its eyes were startling, electric blue, intelligent, too intelligent for an animal. Thump, thump. Madison's heart hammered a erratic rhythm against her ribs. When the pup's blue eyes met hers, the world tilted. For a split second, she didn't see a flea market. She saw a forest. She smelled pine and rain and blood. "How much?" The words tumbled out of her mouth before she authorized them. "What are you doing?" Madison, her brain screamed. "You can't afford a hamster, let alone a dying wolf." The old man pointed a bony finger at a piece of cardboard taped to the cage. $1. Last chance. $1. Madison scoffed, skepticism warring with the magnetic pull in her gut. What's the catch? Is he sick? Is he dangerous? The price is the price, the man said softly. He leaned forward, the shadows clinging to his face. You arrived exactly on time, child. He has been waiting for you for 27 years. Madison froze. I'm 27. I know. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather raised the fine hairs on her arms. This was crazy. This was the start of a horror movie. She needed to run. She needed to sell her laptop and pay her rent. But then, the pup whimpered. It was a broken, high-pitched sound that tore straight through Madison's defenses. He nudged his nose against the bars, reaching for her. Okay, Madison whispered. Fumbling in her pocket, she pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. Okay, I'll take him. She slapped the dollar on the velvet. The old man smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was sad and knowing. The bond is struck, he murmured. Madison unlatched the cage. As soon as her skin brushed the rusty metal, a spark of static electricity snapped, loud enough to hear. She flinched, but reached in, scooping the shivering bundle into her arms. He was heavier than he looked, burning up with fever. He smelled of sickness, but underneath that, there was a scent, something like cedarwood and crisp winter air. It was intoxicating. I've got you, she whispered into the dirty white fur. You're safe now. She turned to ask the old man for food advice, but the words died in her throat. The chair was empty. The velvet cloth was gone. The table was gone. She was standing alone in the dark corner of the parking lot, holding a dying wolf, with $36 to her name. You are a moron, Madison Carter, a certified grade A idiot. Madison sat on the floor of her bathroom, the white wolf pup resting on a pile of old towels. She had spent 10 of her remaining dollars on Pedialyte, raw hamburger meat, and baby wipes at the 24-hour bodega. She dipped a washcloth into warm water and gently wiped the grime from the pup's face. There you go, she cooed softly. Look at you. You're beautiful. The water turned gray, revealing fur that was snowy white and soft as silk. The pup leaned into her touch, his breathing ragged, every time her hand brushed his skin. That strange heat flared again. It wasn't just warmth, it was energy. It felt like she was drinking 3 shots of espresso with every stroke of his fur. You need a name, she murmured, wringing out the cloth. She touched his ear, her fingers lingering. A jolt stronger this time zapped her fingertips. Lucas. The name appeared in her mind, not a thought, but a whisper. Clear, distinct, male. Madison pulled her hand back, eyes wide. Okay. Lack of sleep is finally making me hallucinate. Great. The pup's eyes fluttered open. The blue was hazing over with pain. He convulsed, his small body arching off the towels. Hey, stay with me. Madison panicked. She dropped the cloth and placed both hands on his small chest. Please, don't die. I just got you, please. She closed her eyes, focusing everything on the frantic beat of the tiny heart under her palms. Heal, she thought desperately. Be okay. Just be okay. A golden light, faint but undeniable, began to glow beneath her skin. It flowed from her palms into the wolf. The wolf's whimper turned into a low, guttural groan. Wait, that wasn't a wolf noise. The sound of bones cracking filled the small bathroom like dry branches snapping in a fire. Oh my God! Madison scrambled backward, hitting her back against the bathtub. The wolf's body began to elongate. Fur receded into skin, paws stretched into hands, the snout flattened. Madison covered her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. She watched in paralyzed horror as the animal she had just bought for $1 twisted and reshaped itself until a human boy lay on the bathroom tiles. He looked about 8 years old, naked, shivering, and covered in sweat. The boy gasped, sucking in air as if he hadn't breathed in years. He opened his eyes the same electric blue and looked straight at Madison. "Luna." His voice was raspy, broken. Tears streamed down his dirt-streaked face. You came." Madison's brain short-circuited. What? The boy tried to sit up but collapsed back onto the towels. "Uncle Dominic," he sobbed, his small hand reaching out to grab Madison's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Tell Uncle Dominic I'm sorry and tell him to come get me." "Who is Dominic?" Madison shrieked, her voice finally working. "Kid, who are you?" "Lucas," he whispered, his eyes rolling back in his head. "He's coming. Can't you hear him?" "Hear who?" The sound shattered the night. It wasn't a dog barking. It wasn't thunder. It was a roar so primal, so deep, that the glass in Madison's medicine cabinet rattled. It came from right outside her window, 3 stories down. Madison scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering against her throat. She rushed out of the bathroom and to the single window in her living area. She tore the blinds open. Down on the street, under the flickering yellow street lamp, a shadow moved. It was massive, a wolf the size of a horse, black as coal, prowling in circles around the entrance to her building. The beast stopped. It looked up. Even from 3 stories up, Madison saw them, eyes of liquid silver, burning with rage, burning with hunger. The gaze locked onto hers, and Madison felt her knees buckle. The connection was instantaneous and violent. It felt like someone had swung a sledgehammer into her chest, cracking her open, exposing her soul to the night air. The black wolf bared its teeth. Then, a voice spoke, not in the room, not from the street, but inside her head. A voice deep, velvet smooth, and terrifyingly possessive. "Found you." The voice in her head faded, leaving a ringing silence that was somehow louder than the roar. "Found you." Madison backed away from the window, her breath hitching in short, sharp gasps. Her hands were shaking so badly she knocked a ceramic mug off the counter. It shattered, the sound like a gunshot in the tiny apartment. Then came the pounding. It wasn't a knock. It was a heavy, rhythmic thud against her front door that shook the hinges. Thud, thud. "Open the door." A voice commanded from the hallway. It wasn't the telepathic voice this time. It was real, rough, and dripping with authority. "Now." Madison grabbed the only weapon she had, a cast-iron skillet from the drying rack. I'm calling the police," she yelled, her voice trembling. "I have a gun." "You have a frying pan," the man growled through the wood. "And you have my nephew." The lock clicked, snapped. Actually, the deadbolt didn't unlock. The metal simply sheared off under immense pressure. The door swung open, hitting the wall with a deafening crash. Madison raised the skillet, prepared to swing, but her arm froze mid-air. Dominic Blackwood filled the doorway. He was overwhelming. That was the only word for it. He had to be at least 6'4", with shoulders broad enough to block out the hallway light. He wore tactical black cargo pants and a tattered gray t-shirt that strained against his chest, damp with rain. But it was his face that stole the air from Madison's lungs. High cheekbones, a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and those eyes liquid silver, swirling with a storm of emotions, rage, relief, and something else. Something hot and hungry. He stepped into the room. The air pressure seemed to drop. "Stay back, young Mo," Madison warned, though she lowered the skillet slightly. Her body was betraying her, instead of fight or flight. Every cell in her anatomy was screaming, "Go to him." Her skin prickled with static electricity. Her heart wasn't beating. It was vibrating. Dominic didn't look at the skillet. He looked at her. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring. "Vanilla," he murmured, his voice dropping an octave. "And fear. Why are you afraid of me, little moon?" He took a step closer. The energy rolling off him was suffocating, a mix of musk, rain, and raw power. "I don't know who you are," Madison stammered, backing up until her legs hit the sofa. "Get out!" Dominic stopped inches from her. He reached out, not to hurt her, but to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers were calloused, rough against her soft skin. The contact sent a jolt of pleasure straight to her core, so intense her knees buckled. "You know who I am," he whispered, leaning down so his lips brushed her ear. "Your soul knows. Your wolf knows." "I don't have a wolf," she breathed, unable to look away from his mouth. "I'm human." "Uncle Dom." The small, weak voice from the bathroom shattered the trance. Dominic's head snapped up. The seductive predator vanished, replaced instantly by a terrified guardian. He pushed past Madison, storming into the bathroom. Madison followed. Clutching the door frame, she watched as the giant of a man fell to his knees on the bath mat. "Lucas!" Dominic choked out. He reached for the boy but hesitated, as if afraid the child would break. Lucas, pale and shivering, managed a weak smile. I told you the Luna would help." Dominic looked at the boy's human form, then back at Madison. His silver eyes were wide with shock. He's human. He hasn't been human in 6 months. The curse locks him in wolf form. Madison hugged herself, the cast iron skillet forgotten on the floor. I gave him some water, and I held him." Dominic stood up slowly, turning to face her. The intensity was back, but the anger was gone. "You held him, and the fever broke." "Yes." Dominic crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. He grabbed Madison's hands, pulling them up to inspect her palms. "What are you doing?" she gasped, trying to pull away. But his grip was iron. "The heat," he muttered, staring at her skin. "I can feel it coming off you like a furnace." He looked into her eyes, searching. "Who are you? Which pack are you from?" "I told you I'm not from a pack," Madison yelled, frustration overriding her fear. "I'm a graphic designer from Queens. I have $30 to my name, and I bought a wolf for $1 because I'm an idiot." Dominic stared at her for a long second. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. "A graphic designer," he repeated, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea what you are, Madison?" "How do you know my name?" "It's on the lease on your counter." He nodded toward the kitchen. "And I know what you are because my nephew is alive. You're a healer, a moon healer, the rarest bloodline in our history, extinct for 30 years. He stepped closer again, trapping her against the sink vanity. The sexual tension spiked, thick and heavy. "And," he added, his voice dropping to a possessive growl, "you are mine." "I am not yours," Madison argued, though her breath hitched as his hand slid to her waist. His thumb rubbed circles against her hip bone through her thin shirt. "I don't belong to anyone." "Fate disagrees," Dominic murmured. He leaned in, his nose grazing along her jawline, inhaling her scent. "The bond doesn't lie. I've been looking for you for 200 years. Do you think I'm going to let you go now?" 200? Madison blinked. "You're crazy. You're actually insane." "Crazy about you," he corrected. His lips were millimeters from hers. "Come with me, to the Blackwood territory. It's not safe here. If I found you, others will too." "I can't just leave." Madison pushed against his chest. It was like pushing a brick wall. "I have a life I have. Bills." "I will buy the building and burn it down if that settles your bills," Dominic said, dead serious. "You are coming with—" Crash. The living room window exploded inward. Shards of glass flew everywhere. Madison screamed, shielding her face. Dominic roared, spinning around and shielding her body with his own. 3 dark shapes leaped into the apartment. They weren't fully wolves, and they weren't fully men. They were hunched. distorted creatures with matted gray fur and yellow eyes, rogues, feral shifters who had lost their minds to bloodlust. "Matthias sent us," one of the creatures hissed, drool dripping from its jaws. "Get the boy, kill the healer." "Lucas!" Madison screamed, trying to run to the bathroom, but Dominic shoved her behind him. "Stay down," Dominic ordered. He didn't shift. He didn't have time. He launched himself at the first rogue with human fists. The sound of the impact was sickeningly loud. Dominic moved with supernatural speed, dodging a claw swipe and snapping the rogue's arm like a twig. But there were 3 of them. While Dominic engaged 2, the third rogue lunged past him, heading straight for the bathroom, straight for Lucas. "No!" Madison scrambled across the floor, grabbing a shard of broken glass. The rogue kicked the bathroom door open. Lucas screamed. Madison didn't think. She didn't calculate. A blinding white rage exploded in the center of her chest. It wasn't fear, it was the ancient, protective instinct of a mother, a guardian, a Luna. She leaped onto the rogue's back, stabbing the glass into its shoulder. The rogue roared in pain and spun around, backhanding her. Madison flew across the room, slamming into the wall. Pain exploded in her head. "Madison!" Dominic bellowed, distracted. One of the other rogues sank its teeth into his arm. Madison lay on the floor, vision blurring. She saw the rogue cornering Lucas. She saw Dominic bleeding. "Get up!" a voice inside her commanded. Not the telepathic voice, her voice, the wolf she didn't know she had. "Get up!" Her bones began to burn. It felt like her skin was being ripped apart. She arched her back, a scream tearing from her throat that morphed into a howl. Gold light flooded the room, blinding the rogues. Dominic froze, staring. Where Madison had been lying, a wolf now stood. But she wasn't like the others. She was sleek, smaller than Dominic, but radiating power. Her fur was pure, shimmering gold, with silver crescent moon markings swirling on her flanks. The golden wolf, the symbol of the moon goddess herself. The rogue near Lucas hesitated. "What the—" Madison didn't give him a chance to finish. She moved like a lightning bolt. She lunged, her jaws clamping around the rogue's neck with a savage jerk of her head. She threw the massive creature across the room as if he were a rag doll. She stood over Lucas, baring her teeth, a low, rumbling growl emanating from her chest. Her eyes were glowing pure white. Dominic, seeing his mate in her true form, felt a surge of pride and power so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. He dispatched the last rogue with a brutal snap of a neck. Silence fell over the destroyed apartment. Madison the golden wolf panted heavily. The light in her fur began to dim. The adrenaline crash hit her all at once. Her legs wobbled. She collapsed, shifting back into her human form, naked and unconscious on the floor. Dominic was there instantly. He pulled off his tattered shirt and wrapped it around her, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He looked down at her sleeping face, then at the terrified but safe Lucas. "We're going home," Dominic whispered, pressing a kiss to Madison's forehead. "I've got you, my Luna. I've got you." Soft. Everything was impossibly soft. Madison groaned, shifting her weight. Her body felt like it had been run over by a truck, then put back together by someone missing the instruction manual. Her muscles ached with a deep, bruising soreness that went down to the bone. She forced one eye open. This wasn't her peeling ceiling with the water stain shaped like Florida. This was vaulted timber, dark and ancient, illuminated by the soft glow of morning light filtering through heavy velvet curtains. She shot up, or tried to. A hand, large and warm, gently pushed her shoulder back down. "Easy," a deep voice rumbled. "Your body is still in shock. The first shift is traumatic." Madison turned her head. Dominic was sitting in a leather armchair pulled right up to the bedside. He looked different than the night before. The tactical gear was gone, replaced by a simple black Henley that hugged his biceps and dark sweatpants. He looked exhausted. Dark circles bruised the skin under his silver eyes, and a shadow of stubble darkened his jaw. "Lucas," Madison rasped. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Dominic nodded toward the other side of the king-size bed. Madison turned, curled up on top of the duvet, still wearing oversized pajamas. Was Lucas. He was sleeping soundly, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm Madison hadn't seen in him before. He wasn't shaking, he wasn't sweating, he was just a boy, sleeping. "He hasn't let go of your hand all night," Dominic said softly. Madison looked down. Sure enough, Lucas's small fingers were wrapped tight around her pinky. A lump formed in her throat. "Where are we?" she whispered. "Blackwood Manor," Dominic said. Reaching for a glass of water on the nightstand, he brought it to her lips, supporting the back of her head so she could drink. The gesture was so intimate, so domestic, that Madison felt her cheeks heat up. "We are in the heart of my territory, upstate New York, deep in the Adirondacks. No one can get to you here without going through 500 of my best warriors." Madison drank greedily, the cool water soothing her throat. When she finished, she looked at Dominic. "Last night, I turned into a wolf." "You did?" "A gold wolf." "A golden wolf," Dominic corrected, reverence coloring his tone, "the mark of the moon goddess's direct line." Madison fell back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. "I'm a graphic designer. I worry about font kerning and deadlines. I don't turn into animals and fight monsters." "You do now." Dominic leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "Madison, look at me." She didn't want to. Looking at him felt dangerous. It made that humming beneath her skin grow louder. But she looked. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked quietly. "The pull." "It feels like static electricity," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Every time you're close, it makes me feel jittery." "It's the bond," Dominic explained. He reached out, taking her free hand. His skin was rough, hot against hers. "Our souls are tethering. It's biological, spiritual, and inevitable, right now. It's chaotic because we haven't completed the mating mark. Your body is craving mine to stabilize the energy." Madison's breath hitched. "Stabilize?" "Grounding," he murmured, his thumb rubbing the pulse point of her wrist. "You are a storm, Madison. I am the earth. You need to anchor yourself to me, or the power will burn you out." He lifted her hand, pressing a slow, lingering kiss to her knuckles. His eyes never left hers. The sensation was electric, a jolt of pure pleasure that made her toes curl. It wasn't just physical. It felt like he was kissing her nervous system. "You're flirting with me," she whispered, trying to sound tough but failing miserably. Dominic smirked, the expression transforming his face from terrifying alpha to devastatingly handsome man. "I am courting you. Little moon, there is a difference. Flirting is a game, courting is a promise." An hour later, having showered and changed into clothes, Dominic had provided soft leggings and an oversized sweater that smelled like him. Madison ventured out of the room. The manor was less of a house and more of a fortress. Stone walls, high ceilings, and wolves people everywhere. They stopped talking when she walked by, bowing their heads slightly. It was unnerving. "Ignore them," Dominic said, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back. "They can smell the power on you. Instinct tells them to submit." "I don't want anyone submitting," Madison muttered. "I just want coffee." "Kitchen is this way." They entered a massive industrial-style kitchen where a young woman with pink streaks in her hair was aggressively chopping fruit. "Sienna," Dominic barked. The girl jumped, spinning around. "Dom, you're back!" She rushed over, hugging him briefly before her eyes landed on Madison. Her jaw dropped. "Holy crap! You weren't kidding, she's glowing. Madison, this is my sister, Sienna, Dominic introduced, sounding long-suffering. Hi, Madison waved awkwardly. Hi, you're the legendary moon healer and you say, hi. Sienna grinned, grabbing Madison's hand and shaking it. Thank God. I was worried you'd be some ancient, mystical crone. You're pretty, Dom. She's pretty. Good job. Sienna. A cool, sharp voice cut through the warmth of the room. Madison turned. Standing in the doorway was a woman who looked like she had walked out of a Vogue editorial. Tall, platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, ice blue eyes, and wearing a suit that cost more than Madison's entire life earnings. Vivian. Dominic's voice went flat. His hand tightened slightly on Madison's back. Vivian walked into the room, her heels clicking rhythmically on the stone floor. She didn't look at Dominic. She looked straight at Madison, her gaze dissecting her like a frog in biology class. So, Vivian said, her voice smooth but cold, this is the stray you brought home. Watch your tone. Beta, Dominic warned, a low growl vibrating in his chest. I am simply being practical. Alpha, Vivian replied, finally looking at him. The council is in an uproar. You missed the treaty signing. Matthias is moving his troops to the border, and you are here, playing house with a fledgling. She turned back to Madison, a smirk curling her red lips. You look fragile. Honey, are you sure you're in the right place? This is a war zone, not a petting zoo. Madison felt small. She felt dirty compared to Vivian's pristine perfection. Madison is my mate, Dominic stated, his voice booming. She is the future Luna of this pack. Vivian flinched, but she recovered quickly. Is she... Last I checked, the council has been arranging our union for 5 years, Dominic, to merge the Blackwood and Cross bloodlines, to secure the peace. She looked at Madison with pity. He didn't tell you we're engaged. Politically, at least. Madison felt like she'd been slapped. She pulled away from Dominic's touch. Engaged. It was a proposal, Dominic snapped, turning to Madison, desperation in his eyes. A proposal I never accepted. The council pushed it. Vivian pushed it. I never agreed. I was waiting for you. Waiting for a ghost story, Vivian scoffed. And now that she's here, look at her, Dom. She barely knows how to stand. She can't lead a pack. She'll get us all killed. Enough! Dominic roared. The windows rattled. Before the argument could escalate, the kitchen door burst open. A man in a white lab coat rushed in, looking panicked. Alpha, you need to come. It's the boy. It's Lucas. The scene in the medical wing was chaos. Lucas was thrashing on a hospital bed, restrained by 2 large wolves. His skin was burning hot, turning a sickly shade of gray. Black veins were crawling up his neck, pulsing like living worms. What's happening? Madison screamed, pushing past Dr. Adrian Wells to get to the bed. The curse is fighting back, Dr. Wells said, adjusting his glasses frantically. You suppressed it last night, but it's adapting. It's trying to force the shift again, but his body is too weak. If he shifts now, his bones will shatter. Do something, Dominic commanded. I can't, Wells yelled back. This is dark magic. Alpha science doesn't work on this. He needs a massive transfusion of spiritual energy, or his heart will stop in minutes. The heart monitor began to beep erratically. Beep, beep, beep. Dominic. A voice came from the doorway. It was Vivian, holding a phone. The Council High Elder is on the line. They know you're here. If you don't take this call and explain why you abandoned the treaty, they will sanction the pack. We will lose our allies. Dominic looked at the phone, then he looked at Lucas, writhing in pain. Then he looked at Madison. Madison was terrified. She looked at her hands. She didn't know how to do this. Go, she told Dominic, her voice trembling. What? Dominic stared at her. Go take the call. Save your pack, Madison said, tears welling in her eyes. I will save Lucas. Madison, you're drained, Dominic argued, grabbing her shoulders. If you use that much power again so soon, it could kill you. He's the only family I have. Madison corrected herself. Trust me. Dominic hesitated. The agony of the choice was written all over his face, duty or love, pack or family. I trust you, he whispered. He kissed her forehead hard, then turned to Vivian. This isn't over. He stormed out to deal with the council. Madison turned back to the bed. Okay, Lucas, just you and me. Kid. She placed her hands on Lucas's chest. Heal. She didn't just think it, she pushed it. She envisioned her own energy, her own life force, as a river, and she broke the dam. Dominic paced while the hologram of the High Elder droned on about protocols and reckless behavior. Unacceptable. Alpha Blackwood, you risk the stability of the entire region for a stranger. Dominic wasn't listening. He was focused on the bond. At first, it was a warm hum. Then, it became a burning heat. Suddenly, a spike of pain shot through his chest, sharp, icy, and terrifying. It wasn't his pain, it was hers. She was fading. Alpha Blackwood, are you listening? The elder demanded. Dominic felt Madison's heartbeat through the bond. It was slowing down. Thump, thump. She was giving too much. She was dying to save the boy. Alpha, Vivian hissed from the corner. Answer him. Dominic looked at the hologram. To hell with the sanctions. Excuse me? The elder sputtered. My mate needs me, Dominic growled. If she dies, there won't be a region left to stabilize because I will destroy everything. He smashed his fist into the console, ending the call. He didn't walk to the door, he ran. The medical wing was bathed in blinding white light. Dr. Wells was cowering in the corner, shielding his eyes. The monitors had exploded. Madison was no longer standing. She was floating a few inches off the ground, her hair defying gravity, swirling around her head like a halo. Her skin was translucent, glowing so bright her veins looked like liquid gold. Her hands were still on Lucas. The black veins on the boy were retreating, dissolving into nothingness. Lucas was breathing easily. But Madison, she was burning up. She was pouring her soul into the boy, leaving nothing for herself. Madison, stop. Dominic burst through the doors. The force of the energy in the room hit him like a physical wall, pushing him back. She can't hear you, Dr. Wells yelled over the roar of magic. She's in a trance. She's going to burn out. Dominic fought against the pressure. It felt like walking into a hurricane. Every step was a battle. Madison. He reached the bed. He grabbed her waist and pulled her away from Lucas. Currents of raw magic arced between them, stinging his skin, burning his clothes. Look at me, Dominic roared, shaking her. Her eyes were open, but they were pure white. No pupils, no iris. I have to save him, she whispered, her voice sounding like 1,000 voices layered together. He is safe, Dominic yelled, wrapping his arms around her, crushing her chest to his. He is safe. Madison, come back to me. Come back. He did the only thing he could think of. He grounded her the way wolves did. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. He poured his own strength, his own alpha dominance, into the kiss, trying to force the energy back down, trying to act as a lightning rod for her storm. For a second, nothing happened. The heat intensified. Then, Madison gasped against his mouth. The white light in her eyes faded, returning to warm hazel. Her body went limp. The floating stopped, and gravity reclaimed her. She collapsed entirely into Dominic's arms. The room fell silent, save for the steady, healthy breathing of Lucas on the bed. Did I do it? Madison mumbled into Dominic's neck, her voice slurred with exhaustion. Dominic buried his face in her hair, his own heart racing so fast it hurt. He held her tight enough to bruise, terrified that if he let go, she would vanish. "You did it," he rasped, his voice thick with emotion. "You crazy, stubborn woman. You did it." Madison let out a soft sigh. "Good. Now, I think I'm going to pass out." And she did. Dominic lifted her into his arms, glaring at the doctor and the gathered crowd. "Clear the hallway," he ordered, his voice deadly quiet. "If anyone disturbs her rest council, Vivian, or God himself, I will rip their throat out." Hunger. That was the first thing Madison felt, a ravenous, clawing emptiness in her stomach. Then came the thirst. Then came the smell. It was the scent of rain, cedar wood, and deep, dark earth. It was everywhere, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. It made her feel safe. It made her feel cherished. Madison fluttered her eyes open. The room was dim, lit only by the embers dying in the massive stone fireplace across the room. She was tucked into the king-sized bed, buried under layers of down comforters. She turned her head slightly. Dominic was there. He was asleep in the leather armchair, his long legs stretched out in front of him, crossed at the ankles. He looked wrecked. His usually immaculate hair was a mess of black waves falling over his forehead. A thick shadow of beard covered his jaw, making him look rugged and dangerous. One of his large hands hung off the armrest, his fingers twitching slightly in his sleep. He hadn't left. A lump formed in Madison's throat. In 27 years of navigating the foster system, of cheap apartments and lonely holidays, no one had ever stayed. No one had ever sat in a chair for days just to watch her breathe. She slowly slid her hand out from under the covers. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, and brushed the back of his hand. His reaction was instantaneous. Dominic's eyes snapped open. Silver flashed in the dark. Before she could blink, he was out of the chair and on his knees beside the bed, his hands cupping her face. "You're back," he rasped. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "Madison." "Hi," she whispered, her voice weak. 3 days, Dominic murmured, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones, checking her temperature, checking her reality. "You've been out for 3 days. I thought—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I thought I burned you out." "I'm okay," she said, though her limbs felt like lead. "Just hungry." Dominic let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a sob combined. "Hungry? I can fix hungry." He moved to the nightstand, grabbing a thermos. "Bone broth. Dr. Wells said you'd need protein immediately." He helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her back. He didn't hand her the cup. He held it to her lips, tilting it gently. Madison drank. It was warm and salty and the best thing she had ever tasted. When she finished, she leaned back, looking at him. The intensity in his gaze was unnerving. He wasn't looking at her like she was a guest or a patient. He was looking at her like she was the only source of gravity in the room. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked softly. "Because I realized something while you were sleeping," Dominic said. He sat on the edge of the mattress, his weight dipping the bed. "I have lived for 2 centuries. I have fought in wars. I have buried friends. I have led this pack through hell. But I have never known true fear until I saw you fall in that medical wing." Madison's heart skipped a beat. "You were scared." "Terrified," he corrected. He reached out, lacing his fingers through hers. The contact sent that familiar spark shooting up her arm, but this time, it wasn't chaotic. It was a warm, humming current. "I realized that if you died, I wouldn't survive it. Not just because of the bond, but because of you." The air in the room grew heavy, charged with static. "Dominic." "I want you, Madison," he confessed, his voice dropping to a low, vibrating purr. "Every part of you, Your stubbornness, your bravery, your scent. God, your scent drives me insane." He leaned in. Madison didn't pull away. She leaned forward to meet him. When his lips touched hers, it wasn't tentative. It was an explosion. Dominic groaned low in his throat, his hand tangling in her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. His mouth was hot, demanding, tasting of coffee and desperation. Madison's hands found his shoulders, gripping the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. The static beneath her skin turned into a roaring fire. It felt like her blood was turning to champagne bubbly and hot. She felt his teeth graze her lower lip, a playful, possessive nip that made her gasp. She wanted more. She wanted to crawl into his lap. She wanted to tear that shirt off him and feel his skin against hers. "Dominic," she moaned against his mouth. That sound seemed to snap him back to reality. Dominic pulled back, breathing heavily. His pupils were blown wide. Swallowing the silver, his chest heaved. "We have to stop," he gritted out. Though he didn't move away, he rested his forehead against hers. "Why?" Madison whispered, dazed. "I don't want to stop." "Because the mating mark isn't complete," he explained, his voice strained with restraint. "If I take you now, if we join bodies without the bite, the energy transfer will be too much for you. You're still recovering. It would hurt you." He kissed the tip of her nose. "Gentle now. And I will never hurt you." Madison nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. Okay. She shifted, pulling her knees up to her chest. As she moved, the neckline of the oversized sweater slipped, revealing her collarbone. Dominic's eyes tracked the movement, filled with desire. But then, his gaze froze. He wasn't looking at her skin. He was looking at the silver chain hanging around her neck, a necklace she had worn every day of her life. "Where did you get that?" Dominic asked. His voice had lost all warmth. It was sharp, commanded. Madison blinked, confused by the sudden shift in mood. Her hand flew to the pendant, a simple, tarnished silver crescent moon with a tiny jagged chip on the bottom edge. "This," she fingered the metal. "I don't know. I've always had it. The social workers said it was in my blanket when I was found on the fire station steps as a baby. It's the only thing I have from my birth mother." Dominic went pale, actually, physically pale. "Adrian!" Dominic bellowed, not bothering to use the intercom. "Get in here now!" 10 minutes later, Dr. Adrian Wells was standing by the bed, holding a magnifying glass to Madison's necklace. His hands were shaking. "Well," Dominic demanded, pacing the room like a caged tiger. Adrian lowered the glass. He looked at Madison with an expression of pure awe. "It's authentic. The chip on the bottom, that happened during the Battle of Obsidian Creek. I read the logs." "What are you talking about?" Madison asked, looking between the two men. "It's just cheap silver." "It is the moon crest," Dominic said, stopping his pacing. He looked at Madison with a mixture of sorrow and wonder. It belonged to Celeste Lunar. The name hung in the air. "Who is Celeste Lunar?" Madison asked. "She was the last moon healer," Adrian whispered, "the most powerful she-wolf to ever walk the earth. She disappeared 28 years ago, right after the Great War against the Dark Alpha." Dominic stepped forward. "Madison?" Celeste was known for two things, her healing power and that necklace. He took a deep breath. "If you have this necklace, and you have her powers." "She was my mother," Madison finished, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Yes," Dominic said. Madison stared at the wall. "So, I'm not just nobody, I'm her daughter." "You are royalty," Adrian corrected. "You are the heir to a bloodline we thought was dead." "But wait," Madison frowned, her mind racing. "The old man at the market, he said Lucas had been waiting for 27 years. Lucas is only 8. Dominic's expression darkened. Celeste didn't just disappear. She died fighting the Dark Alpha to save our kind, but she was a healer and a seer. She saw the future. Dominic sat down beside her again, taking her hands. Dr. Wells has a theory about the curse on Lucas. We couldn't understand why a simple boy was cursed with such dark magic that resisted all treatment. It wasn't just a curse, Adrian interjected, excitement rising in his voice. It was a beacon. Celeste knew she was going to die. She knew she had to hide her daughter, you, in the human world to keep you safe from her enemies. But she needed a way to bring you back when you were strong enough. She cast a spell, Dominic continued, his eyes intense. A spell that would lie dormant for decades until it found a vessel in my family, the family she trusted. It latched onto Lucas. The sickness wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to be impossible to cure by anyone except you. Madison pulled her hands away, feeling cold. So, my mother used a child. She tortured a little boy for months just to, get my attention. She used a fail-safe, Dominic said gently. It was desperate magic. Madison. She knew that your instinct, the healer instinct, would force you to save him. It was the only way to drag you out of the human world and bring you to me, to your fate. It feels like manipulation, Madison whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. My whole life. Me finding the wolf. It wasn't luck. It was a setup. She felt a tear slide down her cheek. I'm not a person. I'm just a chess piece in some dead woman's game. No, Dominic said fiercely. He grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. The circumstances were engineered, but the bond, what I feel for you, that is real. The way you fought for Lucas. That was you, not your mother. You. Madison looked into his silver eyes, desperate to believe him. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But before she could answer, the bedroom door burst open. It wasn't a knock. The lock was blown off. Vivian stood there, but she looked terrified. Her perfect hair was messy, and she was panting. Dominic, she gasped. We have a problem, a massive problem. What did I say about interrupting? Dominic snarled, standing up and blocking Madison from view. It's Matthias Kane, Vivian said, holding up a tablet. He's hacked our perimeter broadcasts. He's live streaming to every alpha in the country. Dominic snatched the tablet. Madison leaned forward to see. On the screen, a man with pale skin and black eyes sat on a throne made of bones. He smiled, showing teeth filed into points. Greetings, Blackwood. The man on the screen purred. I hear you found the lost princess, the daughter of the woman who killed my father. Matthias leaned into the camera. Here is my offer. Hand over the moon healer by midnight tomorrow. If you do, I leave your pack alone. If you don't, I will burn your forest to ash, slaughter your men, and take her anyway. The transmission cut to static. Silence filled the room. Vivian looked at Dominic. The council is already calling. They want us to hand her over. They say one life isn't worth a war. Dominic slowly handed the tablet back to Vivian. His stillness was more terrifying than his rage. He turned to Madison. They want me, Madison whispered, fear gripping her throat. Dominic, if I go? Dominic let out a sound that shook the floorboards, a deep, resonant growl that started in his chest and filled the room. His eyes were glowing so bright they looked like flashlights. Let them come, Dominic said, his voice deadly calm. Let Matthias come. Let the council come. He turned to Vivian. Tell the warriors to prepare for war, Dominic commanded, because if anyone thinks they are taking my mate, I will paint these mountains red with their blood. The deadline hung over Blackwood Manor like a guillotine blade. Midnight. Outside, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet. Inside, the training gym. The air was thick with sweat and frustration. Again, Dominic barked. Madison groaned, wiping hair out of her eyes. Her knuckles were raw inside the boxing gloves. She threw a right hook at the heavy bag, but her form was sloppy. Her arm dragged. Higher, Dominic corrected. Stepping into her personal space. If you drop your guard, you expose your throat. A rogue won't punch you. Madison, he will bite. I'm trying, Madison snapped, spinning around to face him. But I've been a graphic designer for 10 years. Dominic, my biggest physical exertion used to be carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs. I can't become Xena warrior princess in 12 hours. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. She was angry not at him, but at her own helplessness. Dominic didn't yell back. He just looked at her, his silver eyes softening. He reached out, peeling off her boxing gloves and tossing them to the mat. I don't need a warrior, he said quietly, stepping closer until his boots bumped against her sneakers. I have 500 warriors outside, guarding the perimeter. Then why are we doing this? Because I need you to feel strong, he murmured. He slid his hands around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard body. I can smell your anxiety. Little moon, it's sour. It hurts me to feel you in distress. Madison rested her forehead against his chest. The solid thump of his heart was the only thing grounding her. I'm scared I'm going to get you all killed. Vivian is right, and I'm a liability. Vivian is a fool, Dominic growled, the sound vibrating through Madison's ribs. And you are my life. He lifted her chin with his thumb. The tension in the room shifted instantly from combative to carnal. The gym faded away. There was only the heat of his palms and the scent of cedarwood driving her wild. Every hour that passes, Dominic whispered, his lips hovering over hers. The bond gets tighter. It's agonizing. My wolf is clawing at my insides, wanting to claim you, wanting to mark you so every creature on earth knows you belong to me. Madison's breath hitched. Then do it. Dominic froze. What? Mark me, she challenged, her voice trembling, but sure. If we're going to war tonight, I don't want to die belonging to no one. I want to be yours. Dominic's pupils blew wide, swallowing the silver. He looked ready to devour her right there on the gym mat. He leaned in, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin of her neck, right over her pulse. Madison threw her head back, a moan escaping her throat. Alpha. The intercom on the wall buzzed loudly, shattering the moment. Dominic pulled back with a snarl of pure frustration. He slammed his hand onto the talk button. What? Perimeter breach, Sector 4. The head of security's voice crackled. It might be a diversion, but we need you to verify the scent. Dominic closed his eyes, exhaling sharply. He looked at Madison, apology written all over his face. Go, she said, smoothing his t-shirt. Be the alpha. I'll go to the safe room. He kissed her hard, a promise of things to come. Stay with the guards. Do not go anywhere alone. 30 minutes later, Madison was pacing in the safe room, which was really just Dominic's plush office with reinforced steel shutters over the windows. The door opened. Madison spun around, expecting Dominic. It was Vivian. The beta woman looked unusually disheveled. She carried a silver tray with a steaming porcelain pot. Relax, Vivian said, noting Madison's defensive posture. Dominic is still at the border. It was a false alarm. Just a few coyotes. Madison let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank God. I brought tea, Vivian said, setting the tray on the mahogany desk. Her voice was devoid of its usual venom. Chamomile and valerian root. It calms the nerves. You're vibrating so hard I can hear your teeth chattering from the hall. Madison looked at the woman suspiciously. Why are you being nice to me? Vivian poured a cup. Her hand shook slightly. Because despite what you think, I love this pack, and Dominic loves you. If you're a hysterical mess during the battle, he'll be distracted. A distracted alpha is a dead alpha. She slid the cup across the desk. Drink, for his sake. That logic actually made sense. Madison picked up the cup. It smelled floral and sweet. To survival, Madison murmured, and took a long sip. The tea was warm, then it was hot, then it was burning. Madison frowned, touching her throat. This tastes bitter. Wolfsbane usually is, Vivian said softly. Madison dropped the cup. It shattered on the floor. She grabbed her throat, gasping for air. It felt like she had swallowed liquid fire. Her legs gave out, and she crashed to the carpet. Why? Madison wheezed, her vision swimming. Paralysis was spreading through her limbs like ice water. Vivian stood over her, a single tear tracking down her perfect cheek. Matthias promised. If I gave him you, he would spare Dominic. He would spare the pack. I can't let Dominic die for a stranger. He will kill you? Madison choked out. Maybe, Vivian whispered, but at least Dominic will live. The door flew open. It wasn't a kick. The wood simply disintegrated under the force of the blow. Dominic stood there. He didn't look human. His eyes were glowing crimson red. His fangs were fully extended. He had felt her pain through the bond. Vivian! The roar was so loud it popped Madison's eardrums. Vivian didn't even try to run. She fell to her knees, sobbing. I had to save you. Dominic backhanded her not a killing blow, but enough to knock her unconscious against the far wall. He was beside Madison in a heartbeat, gathering her convulsing body into his arms. No, 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 he chanted, panic cracking his voice. Madison, look at me, breathe. Can't, she mouthed. Darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. Her heart was stuttering. Thump, pause, thump. Lucas ran into the room, followed by Dr. Wells. Wolfsbane, Dr. Wells shouted, smelling the spilled tea. A concentrated dose. It's shutting down her nervous system. Antidote, Dominic screamed. There isn't enough time, Wells yelled back, checking Madison's fading pulse. Her human side is too weak to fight it. She'll be dead in 2 minutes. Dominic went still. The world stopped. He looked down at Madison. Her skin was turning blue. Her eyes were rolling back. She was dying. There is one way, Dominic whispered. Dr. Wells froze. Alpha. If you do that while she's this weak, the surge of power might kill her anyway. She is dying now, Dominic snarled. He looked back at Madison. He needed permission. The bond couldn't be forced, or it would be a cage, not a lifeline. Madison, he said, bringing his lips to her ear. I can save you, but I have to mark you. I have to bind your soul to mine, forever. You will share my life force, my immortality, my strength. Madison couldn't speak. She couldn't move, but in her mind, she reached out. She found that golden thread connecting them and she pulled. Yes. It was a weak mental whisper, but Dominic heard it. He didn't hesitate. He shifted her body, exposing the curve of her neck where her shoulder met her throat. The scent of her distress was overwhelming, but beneath it was the vanilla sweetness of her soul. I claim you, he growled, his voice ancient. I claim you as my mate, my equal, my life. He sank his fangs into her flesh. Pain. It was sharp, piercing, and hot. But then it was ecstasy. Madison gasped, her back arching off the floor. It didn't feel like poison anymore. It felt like liquid gold was being poured directly into her veins. It rushed through her blood, hunting down the wolfsbane and burning it away. Her heart kick-started with a powerful, thunderous rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. She opened her eyes. The room was bathed in a blinding golden light emanating from where Dominic was connected to her. She could feel him, not just his body, but his mind. She felt his terrifying fear of losing her, his bottomless love, his ancient, rugged power. It flooded into her empty spaces, filling her up. Dominic pulled back, licking the wound to seal it. The mark appeared instantly and intricate, swirling tattoo of a wolf and a moon that looked like it had been branded into her skin. He looked at her, his eyes wild, his chest heaving. Madison. She didn't answer with words. The rush of life was too much, too intoxicating. The bond had snapped into place, and the sexual tension they had been fighting for days exploded. Dominic, she breathed. Sitting up, the weakness was gone. She felt stronger than she had ever felt in her life. He grabbed her face, kissing her deeply, drinking in her breath. This wasn't gentle. This was primal. It was a celebration of life. "Everyone out!" Dominic roared, not breaking the kiss. Dr. Wells grabbed the unconscious Vivian and dragged her out. Lucas scrambled away, closing the door which was hanging off its hinges. But he did his best. They were alone. Dominic lifted her, pinning her against the mahogany desk, scattering papers everywhere. His hands were everywhere in her hair, on her waist, gripping her thighs. "You're alive." He groaned against her neck, biting lightly at the sensitive spot just above the new mark. "You're mine." "I'm yours," Madison replied, wrapping her legs around his waist. She pulled his shirt over his head, desperate to feel skin on skin. The act that followed wasn't just sex, it was emerging. When they finally joined, the pleasure was so intense it bordered on pain. Every touch sent shockwaves of golden light through the room. Madison could feel his pleasure as if it were her own. When he groaned, the sound vibrated in her own chest. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation. They moved together with a rhythm as old as time. The bond sang between them, a feedback loop of sensation that climbed higher and higher. "Look at me," Dominic commanded, his voice ragged, sweat dripping from his brow. Madison looked. His eyes were silver fire. "I love you," he said. It was a vow. "I love you," she cried out. When the release came, it wasn't just physical. It felt like the universe shattered and put itself back together. Madison threw her head back, a howl tearing from her throat that was answered by Dominic's own guttural roar. They collapsed against each other, chests heaving, hearts beating in perfect synchronization. The gold light in the room slowly faded to a soft, warm glow. Madison lay in Dominic's arms on the ruined carpet, wrapped in his warmth. She felt complete. For the first time in 27 years, the lonely hollow in her chest was full. Dominic kissed the top of her head, his hand idly stroking her arm. "How do you feel?" "Like I could punch a tank," she murmured, flexing her hand. "Is that normal?" Dominic chuckled, a low rumble. "You have alpha blood running through you now, plus your healer strength. You are likely the strongest female wolf on the continent." Suddenly, a siren began to wail. It was a high-pitched, mournful sound that echoed through the entire valley. Dominic went rigid. The softness vanished from his body, replaced by the tension of a coiled spring. "The perimeter," he said, standing up and pulling Madison with him. He quickly helped her adjust her clothes, his movements efficient but possessive. He walked to the window, shoving the broken shutters aside. Down in the valley, the tree line was burning. A ring of fire was closing in on the manor. And in the flickering light of the flames, thousands of glowing yellow eyes stared back. "Matthias is here," Dominic said, his voice deadly calm. He turned to Madison. He didn't tell her to hide. He didn't tell her to stay back. He looked at the mating mark on her neck, then into her determined hazel eyes. "Ready, my queen?" Madison felt the wolf inside her rise, the golden wolf. Fully awake and bristling with power. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt the bond. She felt Dominic. And she felt invincible. "Let's go kill some monsters," she said. War didn't smell like glory. It smelled like burning hair, ozone, and copper. The valley floor was a chaotic tapestry of violence. The Blackwood Pack warriors, efficient and disciplined in their tactical gear, clashed against the tidal wave of rogues mangled, desperate shifters with madness in their eyes. In the center of the storm, two wolves moved as one. Dominic was a shadow made flesh, a massive black wolf that tore through the enemy lines with terrifying precision. He was pure destruction. Madison was the light. In her golden wolf form, she was a beacon in the smoke. She didn't just fight with teeth and claws, she fought with energy. Every time a rogue lunged at her, a pulse of white-hot moonlight erupted from her fur, throwing them backward as if they'd hit an electric fence. "On your left," Dominic's voice echoed in her mind. Madison didn't need to look. She trusted the bond implicitly. She ducked low, letting a rogue sail over her head, right into Dominic's waiting jaws. "Got him," she projected back, feeling a surge of grim satisfaction that wasn't entirely her own. They were a perfect feedback loop. When Dominic took a shallow slice to his flank, Madison felt the sting, and her healing energy instantly surged through the invisible tether to knit his skin back together. When Madison felt her energy dip, Dominic pushed his raw, inexhaustible stamina into her. They were cutting a path toward the command tent where the signal jammers were located, pushing the rogues back. "We're winning," Madison thought. Breathless, we're actually pushing them back. "It's too easy." Dominic's mental voice was tight with suspicion. Matthias brought 3,000 rogues. Where is the elite guard? Where is Matthias? As if on cue, a scream pierced the cacophony of the battlefield. It wasn't a warrior's battle cry. It was high-pitched, terrified. "Lucas." Madison froze mid-stride. A rogue slammed into her shoulder, but she barely felt it. She ripped the creature away and shifted back to human form, naked and panting in the smoke. "Dominic!" she screamed. "The manor!" Dominic shifted instantly, grabbing a discarded cloak from the mud to throw over her. He flanked us. The frontal assault was a distraction. They looked back up the hill. The fires around the manor weren't just a perimeter anymore. The roof was burning, and standing on the balcony of Madison's room, the safe room, was a silhouette holding a small, struggling figure. Dominic didn't say a word. He grabbed Madison's waist. "Hold on." He didn't run. He launched them. Using his alpha speed, they blurred through the forest, tearing up the slope, leaving the main battle behind. By the time they crashed through the double doors of the master bedroom, Madison's lungs were burning. The room was wrecked. The furniture was splintered. Dr. Wells lay unconscious in the corner, bleeding from a head wound. Matthias Kane stood near the balcony edge. He wasn't a monster in appearance. He was a handsome man in a bespoke suit that looked jarringly out of place amidst the carnage. He held a jagged obsidian dagger against Lucas's throat. Lucas was crying silently, his eyes wide and fixed on Madison. "Welcome home." Matthias smiled. His teeth were stained pink. "I was wondering when you'd realize you were fighting pawns." "Let the boy go, Kane," Dominic growled, stepping forward. His aura flared, turning the air in the room heavy and suffocating. "This is between you and me." "Is it?" Matthias tilted his head. "You took my father's life. Your father took my territory. And her mother," he pointed the knife at Madison, "her mother took my inheritance." Madison stepped forward, her hands raised. The golden light under her skin was pulsing violently. "I'm here. Matthias. You want the moon healer? Take me. Let the kid go." Matthias laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "You still don't get it. Do you think this is just about you?" He grabbed Lucas by the hair, yanking the boy's head back. Lucas whimpered. "Look at him, Madison," Matthias commanded. "Really look at him." Madison looked. She saw the fear. She saw the blue eyes. "He's Dominic's nephew," Madison said, her voice shaking. "He's innocent." "He's not a Blackwood," Matthias spat. "Dominic lied to you. Or maybe, he glanced at Dominic's stony face. Maybe he just omitted the truth to keep his precious weapon compliant. Dominic took a step, his fists clenched. Matthias, if you say another word, I will cut your tongue out. Tell her, Matthias roared. Tell her who the boy is. Silence stretched, tight as a bowstring. Matthias smirked. Fine, I'll do the honors. This boy isn't Dominic's nephew. He is the son of Celeste Lunar. The world stopped spinning for Madison. The roar of the fire outside faded. What? She whispered. Celeste was pregnant when she went to war with my father. Matthias sneered, enjoying every second of her shock. She knew she wouldn't survive. She hid her daughter you in the human system. But the baby, the boy she carried, she couldn't hide him there. So she gave him to the only ally she had left, Dominic's father. Madison looked at Lucas. The blue eyes, the same shade of blue she saw in the mirror every morning. Madison choked out. He is your brother, Matthias declared. Your flesh, your blood, the last male heir of the Lunar line. He pressed the obsidian blade harder against Lucas's skin. A drop of blood welled up. And that creates a lovely symmetry, doesn't it? Matthias whispered. Your mother killed my father, so I am going to kill her son, right in front of her daughter. No. The scream didn't come from Madison's throat. It came from her soul. The bond between her and Dominic flared, but this time, Madison didn't draw from him. She didn't need to. Something inside her broke, the dam that had held back 27 years of loneliness, of wondering why she was abandoned, of feeling like an orphan. It shattered. She wasn't alone. She had a brother, and this man was hurting him. Madison didn't shift. She threw her hands forward. Boom! A shockwave of pure, concentrated moonlight exploded from her body. It wasn't a beam, it was a tsunami. It blew the windows out. It disintegrated the balcony railing. Matthias shouted as the force hit him like a freight train. He was thrown backward, losing his grip on Lucas. The dagger clattered to the floor. Lucas fell, scrambling away on hands and knees. Lucas, come here, Madison yelled. Matthias recovered with supernatural speed. His suit was shredded, his skin burned by the holy light. He snarled, his face contorting into a wolf-like visage. He lunged not at Madison, but at Lucas. If I can't have the power, no one can. Dominic! Madison screamed. But Dominic was too far. Matthias was inches from sinking his claws into the boy's back. Madison did the only thing she could. She didn't attack Matthias. She reached out with her mind, grabbed the curse that lived inside Lucas that dark, twisted knot of magic that had brought them all here, and she pulled. She channeled every ounce of her alpha power, every drop of her healer blood, into that single connection. Break. A sound like a cracking whip echoed through the mountains. Lucas arched his back and screamed. A black mist erupted from his mouth, shrieking as it was expelled. The curse shattered. The force of the expulsion knocked Matthias sideways. Madison fell to her knees, panting, her vision graying out. She had used too much. But Matthias was getting up. He was burned, bleeding, but alive. He looked at Madison, who was defenseless on the floor. He raised his claws for the killing blow. Goodbye, princess. Squelch. Matthias froze. He looked down. A massive clawed hand had punched through his chest from behind. Dominic stood there, eyes glowing red, his face a mask of absolute terrifying rage. You touched my mate, Dominic whispered into Matthias's ear. You touched my family. Dominic ripped his hand back. Matthias crumpled to the floor, gasping, blood pooling around him. Dominic raised his boot to stomp on Matthias's skull, to end it. Don't, a weak voice said. Dominic paused, his foot hovering. He looked at Madison. She dragged herself over to Lucas, pulling her sobbing brother into her arms. She checked him over. He was shaken, but the fever was gone. The curse was gone. He was just a boy. She looked up at Dominic, then at the dying Matthias. "Don't kill him," she said softly. "Madison, he tried to butcher you," Dominic argued, his voice dripping with adrenaline. "If we kill him, the war never ends," Madison said, wiping blood from her lip. "His followers will make him a martyr. His sons will come for our sons." She stood up, her legs shaking, helping Lucas up with her. She walked over to Matthias. The villain looked up at her, hate and fear warring in his eyes. He waited for the final blow. Madison placed her hand on his forehead. "My mother died fighting hate," she whispered. "I choose to live differently." She didn't heal his wounds. She didn't fix his chest. Instead, she sent a pulse of calming, binding energy into his mind. It was a mental cage, a dampener. "I am stripping your alpha command," she declared, her voice echoing with the authority of the moon goddess. "You will live. You will rot in a cell. And every day, you will feel the peace you tried to destroy. You will never be able to command a wolf again." The light faded from Matthias's eyes, not death, but the loss of his inner wolf. He slumped into unconsciousness, now just a broken man. Silence fell over the room. The fires outside were being doused by the rain that finally began to fall. Dominic stared at her. The red faded from his eyes, returning to liquid silver. He looked at her with an expression that went beyond love. It was worship. He stepped over the body of his enemy and pulled Madison and Lucas into a crushing hug. "My brother," Madison sobbed into Dominic's chest, finally letting herself break down. "He's my brother, Dom." "I know," Dominic whispered, kissing her hair, holding them both up. "I know, and he's safe. You're both safe." Outside, the howls of the Blackwood pack rose into the night, not sounds of war, but of victory. The dawn was breaking. The rain had washed the blood from the stone terrace, but the smell of smoke still lingered in the damp morning air. Blackwood Manor was scarred, shattered windows, scorched walls, but it stood. Madison sat on the edge of a cot in the triage tent set up on the lawn. A nurse was carefully bandaging a long, shallow scratch on her arm. "You're lucky, Luna," the nurse said, her voice filled with awe. "This should have been deep enough for stitches, but it's already half closed." "Healer perks," Madison muttered. Though she felt anything but lucky, she felt hollowed out. Across the tent, Dominic was speaking with his generals. He was still covered in grime, his black t-shirt torn, but he commanded the room effortlessly. Every few seconds, his eyes would flick to her, checking, ensuring she hadn't vanished. Madison's gaze drifted to the corner where Lucas sat on a sleeping bag, surrounded by blankets. He was eating a granola bar with fierce concentration. He looked lighter. The dark shadows under his eyes were gone. He looked like an 8-year-old boy who had just had a really bad night, not a cursed vessel of ancient magic. "Hey," a soft voice said. Madison looked up. It was Sienna, Dominic's sister. She had a sling on her arm and a bruise blooming on her cheekbone, but she was smiling. "You were incredible out there," Sienna said, sitting down next to her. "I've never seen anyone strip an alpha of his rank. That's myth-level stuff. Madison." Madison shrugged, wincing. "I just wanted him to stop." "You saved us all," Sienna insisted. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Look, about the whole Lucas is your brother bomb." "Yeah," Madison breathed out. "That? Dom didn't tell you because he couldn't," Sienna said earnestly. "My father, before he died, he swore Dom to a blood oath to protect the boy's identity until the curse was broken. If Dom had spoken the truth, the oath would have killed him." Madison looked at Dominic again. He caught her eye and broke away from the generals, walking toward her. "Leave us," he murmured to the nurse and Sienna. They scrambled away. Dominic stood in front of her, his hands hanging loosely at his sides. He looked vulnerable in a way an alpha never should. "I hated lying to you," he said simply. "Every time you looked at him and didn't know, it burned me." Madison stood up. She walked over to him and placed her hands on his chest, right over his heart. "Sienna told me about the oath." Dominic covered her hands with his own. "That's not an excuse. I should have found a way. You deserve to know who you were fighting for." "I fought for him because I loved him," Madison said fiercely. "Not because of blood, because he was a scared kid who needed me. The blood, that's just a bonus." She looked over at Lucas. "A really complicated, messy bonus." Dominic pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her neck. "I was so afraid you'd hate me, that you'd think I used you just like Matthias said." "I know the difference between using someone and needing them," Madison whispered. "You need me, Dominic, and I need you." He kissed her then, soft and slow, tasting of relief and rain. "Come with me," he said against her lips. "There's something you need to see. Matthias, he talked about your mother, but he didn't have the whole story." They walked through the damaged manor, down a set of stairs Madison hadn't seen before, deep into the foundation of the house. The air here was cool and smelled of old paper. Dominic stopped in front of a heavy iron door. He placed his hand on the scanner, and it clicked open. It was a vault. Inside, shelves were lined with artifacts, weapons, and scrolls, but in the center, on a velvet pedestal, sat a small wooden box. "My father kept this for 28 years, Dominic said, picking up the box. "Celeste gave it to him the night she brought Lucas here. She said to give it to her daughter when the curse broke." He handed the box to Madison. Her hands trembled. It was simple, polished oak, carved with the same moon crest as her necklace. She opened it. Inside was a letter. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded but legible. Madison unfolded it. Her breath hitched. "My dearest Starlight, if you are reading this, I am gone. And if you are reading this, you have done the impossible. You have saved your brother. I am sorry. I am so sorry I had to leave you in a world that didn't understand you. I had to hide you among humans because your scent, even as a baby, you smelled like pure magic. They would have hunted you. Please don't hate your gift, and don't hate me for the burden I placed on you. I didn't place the curse on Lucas to hurt him. I anchored a piece of my own soul to him so that one day it would call out to yours. It was a lighthouse in the dark, guiding you home. The Blackwoods are good people, Dominic. I have seen him in my visions. He is stubborn and broody, but he will love you with a fire that never dies. Live, Madison, don't just survive. Live, love, create. You are the dawn after the long night. Forever yours, Mom. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. Madison sank to the floor, clutching the letter to her chest. A sob tore through her, guttural and raw. It was the grief of a lifetime finally being allowed to surface. Dominic sat down with her on the cold concrete. He didn't try to stop her crying. He just held her, rocking her back and forth, letting her mourn the mother she never knew and the childhood she lost. She loved us, Madison choked out. She didn't abandon me. She saved me. She did, Dominic affirmed. She was a hero, and so are you. They sat there for a long time, until the tears ran dry. 2 weeks later, the healing center was officially open. It was a renovated wing of the manor, filled with sunlight and plants. Madison stood in the center, adjusting a pot of lavender. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, her hair tied back in a messy bun. Luna. She turned. A young wolf, maybe 16, stood there looking nervous. He had a nasty gash on his leg from a training accident. "Hey, Tyler," Madison smiled. "Hop on the table." She placed her hands on his leg. She didn't need the dramatic flare or the blinding light anymore. She had learned control. A soft, Warm glow hummed from her palms, knitting the tissue together. "Wow," Tyler breathed, flexing his leg. "It doesn't even itch. Thanks, Luna." "Drink water," she called after him as he jogged away. "You're good at that." Madison turned to see Matthias standing in the doorway, or rather, the man who used to be Matthias. He wore a gray prison jumpsuit, his wrists bound in heavy silver cuffs that dampened any residual strength. 2 guards stood behind him. His posture was slumped. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary emptiness. "What do you want, Matthias?" Madison asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "They're moving me to the council prison today," he said, his voice raspy. "Maximum security, I won't see the sun again." "You earned that," Madison said, not unkindly. "I know." He looked at her, really looked at her. "Why didn't you kill me? I would have killed you." "Because I'm not you," Madison said simply, "and because my brother shouldn't have to grow up knowing his sister is a murderer." Matthias flinched at the mention of Lucas. "The boy, is he okay?" "He's fine. He's learning to play baseball. He's terrible at it." A ghost of a smile touched Matthias's lips. "Good." He hesitated. "Your mother. She was a worthy opponent. I respected her." "She didn't care about your respect," Madison said. "She cared about peace." Matthias nodded slowly. "You have her eyes." The guards took his arms and led him away. Madison watched him go, feeling a strange sense of closure. The boogeyman was gone. Lunch break. Dominic appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and lifting her off the ground. "Dom put me down," she laughed, swatting his arm. "Never," he growled playfully, nuzzling her neck right over the mating mark. "I have you for 20 minutes before the council meeting. I intend to use them efficiently." "Efficiently?" She raised an eyebrow, turning in his arms. "Very efficiently," he smirked, his hands sliding down to cup her rear. "Oh, get a room." Lucas walked by the door, holding a baseball bat, with little Emma, an orphan from the pack, trailing behind him. "We are in a room!" Dominic yelled back, unbothered. Madison pushed Dominic away, blushing but laughing. "Go play baseball, Lucas." "Emma says I swing like a girl," Lucas complained. "Hey!" Madison and Emma yelled in unison. "Girls swing harder," Emma shouted, punching Lucas's arm. Madison watched them run down the hall, bickering and laughing. Her heart felt so full it might burst. "He's happy," Dominic said softly, standing beside her. "Yeah," Madison leaned her head on his shoulder. "He is." "And you?" Dominic asked, turning her face to his. "Are you happy, Madison? Do you miss Queens? Do you miss your fonts and your coffee shops?" Madison thought about her old apartment, the peeling paint, the silence, the $37. Then she looked at Dominic, the man who would burn the world for her, the man who gave her a home, a purpose, and a family. "I miss the bagels," she admitted, "but I think I like being a queen better." Dominic grinned, that rare, blinding smile that was just for her. "Good, because you're stuck with me. Forever." "Forever sounds like a long time. Alpha." "Not long enough," he whispered, and kissed her. Outside the window, the sun was high over the mountains. The forest was green and alive. The scars on the land were healing, covered by new growth. Life went on, and for the first time, Madison was ready to live it. The dress weighed 30 pounds, but Madison felt weightless. It was a masterpiece of white silk and silver thread, commissioned by the council as a peace offering and perhaps an apology for trying to get her kidnapped. The bodice was fitted tight, encrusted with moonstones that caught the light with every breath she took. The train flowed behind her like a river of starlight. "Stop fidgeting," Sienna scolded gently, swatting Madison's hands away from her hair. "You look perfect. If you touch that pin again, I'm going to bite you, and not in a fun way." Madison laughed, looking at herself in the floor-length mirror of the bridal suite. The woman staring back wasn't the graphic designer from Queens with dark circles under her eyes and a maxed-out credit card. She stood taller. Her skin glowed with a subtle, pearlescent health that came from the wolf spirit settled deep in her bones. The silver moon crest necklace her mother's rested against her throat, finally where it belonged. "I'm just nervous," Madison admitted. "There are 3,000 wolves out there. Alphas from Europe, the High Council. It's a lot for a girl who used to get anxiety ordering pizza." Sienna turned Madison around, her expression softening. "They aren't here for the council. Madison, they're here for you. You broke a centuries-old curse. You stopped a war without slaughtering the enemy. You're the moon healer." Sienna placed a crown on Madison's head woven from silver vines and white winter roses. "Besides," Sienna grinned, "Dominic has been pacing at the altar for 45 minutes. If you don't go out there soon, he's going to chew through a tree." The ceremony was held in the sacred grove, a clearing deep in the forest where the moonlight hit the earth unobstructed. Drums beat a low, rhythmic thrum that matched the beating of Madison's heart. The air smelled of pine, bonfire smoke, and the intoxicating scent of damp earth. As Madison stepped onto the mossy aisle, the crowd went silent. Thousands of heads bowed in unison. But Madison didn't look at the crowd. Her eyes locked onto the figure standing beneath the ancient oak tree. Dominic. He wore a formal black military-style tunic with silver embroidery, emphasizing the terrifying breadth of his shoulders. His hair was tamed mostly, pulled back to reveal the sharp, aristocratic lines of his face. But his eyes. When he saw her, the stoic alpha mask shattered. His jaw went slack. His silver eyes blazed with a hunger and adoration so raw it nearly knocked the wind out of her. Through the bond, she felt his emotions crash into her awe, disbelief. Mine, mine, mine. Madison walked toward him, not led by anyone. She walked alone, strong and steady. When she reached the altar, Dominic didn't wait for the priest. He stepped forward, breaking protocol, and took her hands. His grip was shaking. "You," he whispered, as if she were a hallucination. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in 200 years of life." Madison smiled, her vision blurring with happy tears. "You clean up okay yourself, old man." The high elder, a woman with hair like cobwebs, stepped forward. She didn't look annoyed by Dominic's impatience. She looked amused. "We gather under the gaze of the moon goddess," the elder intoned, her voice carrying without a microphone, "to bind these two souls, not just as mates, but as Alpha and Luna, as king and queen." She looked at Dominic. "Dominic Blackwood, do you swear your blood, your breath, and your bone to this woman?" "I swear." Dominic's voice boomed, resonant and sure. He looked deep into Madison's eyes. "I spent a lifetime hunting for something I couldn't name. I was a weapon without a target, a king without a kingdom. Then I found you in a parking lot, holding a dying wolf." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Dominic smiled tenderly. "You are my conscience," he continued, "my peace, my fire. I vow to protect you until the stars burn out. I vow to listen to you, even when I'm stubborn. I vow to love you in this life and the next." Madison swallowed the lump in her throat. Her turn. "Dominic," she started, her voice clear. "I spent my life thinking I was broken because I didn't fit anywhere. I didn't know I was just waiting for the other half of my soul." She squeezed his hands. "You gave me a home. You gave me a family. You showed me that being strong doesn't mean being hard. I vow to stand beside you, not behind you. I vow to heal you when you hurt. I vow to be your Luna, your partner, and your best friend." The elder nodded. "Then let the bond be sealed before the pack." She handed Dominic a ceremonial dagger. He didn't hesitate. He sliced his palm, then Madison's. They pressed their hands together. It wasn't gross, it was electric. As their blood mixed, a shockwave of golden light erupted from their joined hands. Shooting up into the sky like a beacon, the clouds parted. The full moon seemed to glow brighter in response. The pack howled. It started low, with Lucas in the front row, and swelled until 3,000 voices were singing their loyalty to the night sky. Dominic pulled her in, dipping her low, and kissed her. It was a kiss of possession, of finality. It tasted of forever. The reception was a blur of music, roasted meat, and wine. Madison danced with everyone. She danced with Dr. Wells, who was blushing furiously every time Sienna walked by. She danced with the scary high elder. She even danced with Lucas, who was wearing a tiny tuxedo and looking incredibly proud of himself. "You look happy, sis," Lucas said, spinning her clumsily. "I am," Madison beamed. "Are you having fun?" "Yeah." Lucas pointed toward the dessert table where Emma was stuffing her face with chocolate fountain strawberries. "Emma said she'd marry me if I get her a second piece of cake. I think I'm going to do it." Madison laughed loud and free. "Go get her, tiger!" As Lucas ran off, a pair of strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind. The warmth was instant. The scent of cedarwood enveloped her. "You have fulfilled your social obligations, Luna," Dominic murmured into her ear, his voice rough with need. "I am kidnapping you now." "Is that appropriate behavior for an alpha?" she teased, leaning back into him. "I make the laws," he growled, nipping at her earlobe. "Let's go." They escaped to the highest balcony of the manor, overlooking the entire valley. The party was a distant hum of lights and music below. Up here, it was just the wind and the moon. Dominic leaned against the stone railing, pulling Madison between his legs so her back rested against his chest. He wrapped his massive cloak around both of them, creating a private cocoon. "We did it," Dominic exhaled, resting his chin on her head. "Peace, marriage, no one tried to kill us today. A new record." Madison smiled, resting her hands over his arms that were crossed over her stomach. "It's a good start." She closed her eyes, tuning into her body, tuning into the healer sense that had been growing stronger every day. For the past week, she had felt different, not sick, just doubled. She could hear Dominic's heart beating steady and strong against her back. Thump, thump. She could hear her own heart. Thump, thump. But there was something else, a tiny fluttery sound, faint as a butterfly wing, but undeniable, a third spark of life. She turned in his arms to face him. Dominic looked down, his expression relaxed and happy. "What is it? You went quiet." Madison took his hand, the large, calloused hand that had destroyed armies for her, and placed it flat against her lower stomach. Dominic frowned slightly, confused. "Madison." "Use your senses, Dom," she whispered. "Listen." Dominic went still. He focused, being an alpha. His hearing was supernatural. He listened to the blood rushing in her veins. He listened to her breath. Then he heard it. Swish, 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 swish. His eyes flew open. The silver in his irises swirled violently. He looked from her stomach to her face, his mouth opening and closing. "Is that?" His voice cracked. "Is that?" "I'm a healer," Madison smiled, tears spilling over. "I know the sound of life. It's early, very early, but it's there." Dominic looked terrified. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He slowly dropped to his knees on the stone balcony, heedless of his expensive uniform. He pressed his ear against her stomach, closing his eyes tight. He let out a shaky breath that sounded like a sob. "A pup," he whispered. "Our pup." "A baby," Madison laughed through her tears, combing her fingers through his hair. "But yes, a pup." Dominic looked up at her. His face was wet with tears. "I thought, because I was so old, because of the wars, I never thought I would have this. I never thought I was worthy of this. You are, Madison said firmly. You're going to be a great father. You're already great with Lucas. Dominic stood up and scooped her into his arms, spinning her around, burying his face in her neck. I will give them the world. I will build a fortress around you both. No one will ever touch you. We don't need a fortress, Dominic, Madison whispered, holding him tight. We have the pack. We have each other. He set her down but didn't let go. He framed her face with his hands. You saved my nephew, he said intensely. You saved my pack. You saved my soul. And now you give me a legacy. He kissed her, and this time, it wasn't hungry or desperate. It was reverent. It was a kiss of profound gratitude. They stood there for a long time, watching the moon climb higher into the sky. Below them, the next generation Lucas and Emma played tag in the shadows, inside. Sienna and Adrian were probably arguing over medical journals. The pack was safe. The borders were secure. Madison Carter, the girl who once thought her life was worth $1, looked out at her kingdom. Do you believe in destiny now? Dominic asked softly, tracing the curve of her jaw. Madison touched the moon crest on her neck, then the mating mark on her shoulder, and finally, her stomach. I believe in choices, she answered. Fate might have brought us to the same parking lot, Dominic, but I chose to buy the wolf, and I chose to love the man. Dominic smiled, pulling her back into his warmth. And I will choose you, he vowed into the night, every day, every hour, until the moon falls from the sky. Madison leaned back, looking up at the silver orb watching over them. Let's go home, Alpha, she whispered. We are home, Luna, he replied. And under the watchful gaze of the stars, the golden wolf and her black alpha turned and walked back into the light, ready to begin their forever.